And welcome everybody to the Virtual Science Cafe. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining me. I am your host this evening. My name is Chris Smith. I'm curator for the SCCU Daily Planet Theater at the wonderful North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, right there in the middle of downtown Raleigh. Now, of course, we're doing virtual science cafes right now because the Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh, we are closed at the moment. Museum is not open, but that doesn't mean that the amazing science, research, and inspiration that we hope to provide doesn't stop coming. That's right. Every Thursday night at 7 o'clock, right here on the museum's YouTube channel, we are bringing you our ever popular Science Cafe series. It's a chance for us to get to hear from experts in their fields, learn a little bit about what's going on in the world of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or even art as it relates to science, and how those topics are relevant to our daily lives. And we're going to be doing that tonight like we do every week. So you can subscribe to the museum's YouTube channel, click the bell to get notified. Then anytime we're going live like this for the Science Cafe or any of the other great programs that we offer out of the Museum of Natural Sciences, you will get a notification and you can click right over and join us for all the great sciencey stuff that I know you love and expect from your museum. Now, for tonight's program, I am very excited for tonight's guest because we have ornithologist, bird expert, urban ecologist, and the co-organizer of the Black Birders Week movement. We have with us Deja Perkins. Deja, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for
Hey,
having me.
so glad you could be here. This is so exciting.
I'm super excited to be here.
So, Deja, you are in Raleigh, yes?
I am in Raleigh. Yeah.
How are things in your part of North Carolina right now with things sort of open? Not really.
Things are things are open. I haven't been outside in a few days, so not really sure what the state of the world is right now. But the last time I went outside, it was hot, and people had their mask on, and we were all trying to be socially distancing.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I think in North Carolina in July, saying that it's hot is a pretty good guess.
Yes, yes.
Once we're into July, that one's for sure. So everybody, Deja is also a graduate student at North Carolina State University in Fisheries and Wildlife Conservation Biology. And if you're not familiar, I know we're going to learn a lot about it, but just to sort of set the stage, um, just a few weeks ago, when the incident in Central Park with Christian Cooper being sort of accosted by a person simply for asking them to leash their dog in an ecologically sensitive part of the park, uh, that was one of what would turn out at that moment to be many just sort of blatant instances of racism caught on camera, and that would go on to sort of shock the nation into paying attention to what's going on. And as it relates to people being outdoors, and in particular, people experiencing nature and trying to find ways to connect with nature, I mean, that fits right into what the mission of a natural history museum, at least our natural history museum, is. So that's what we're going to be learning about tonight. And the movement, Black Birders Week, this social media hashtag that took off and opened my eyes to this entire world of incredible people like Deja who are out there studying wildlife, experiencing and connecting with it in so many amazing and important ways. So I'm excited to listen and learn. I hope you are too. I'll remind everybody as we go through the program, you can leave comments and questions for Deja in the chat. We'll be checking those and I'll be moderating those after the presentation. This is the internet though, so we do have moderators standing by. So please do keep everything civil and respectful of our guests tonight. I know that you will. Deja, I will turn the program over to you.
All right, great. Well, I am just going to share my screen here, and we'll go ahead and jump right in. So tonight, we're going to be talking about Black Birders Week, the hashtag that started a movement. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Black Birders Week was a social media event to highlight the experience of Black people in the outdoor spaces, specifically within the popular recreational activity of birdwatching. We had a variety of hashtags and social media events that could be participated in throughout the week to highlight Black people in the outdoors. This movement, this event, was coordinated by a group of virtual friends. And I know everyone is in the virtual space now with the pandemic, but this group of virtual friends have been in this space since April of 2019. And so this group me that we have is really a sort of counter space. It's a space where we can find community, freedom, safety, kinship, where we can laugh and get relief from some of those microaggressions and hardships that we experience in our day-to-day lives, in our lived experience. And so the movement was started by this beautiful Black woman here, Anna Gifty. And after the incident in Central Park, she had the brilliant idea that we should highlight the experience of Black birders because the incident that happened to Christian Cooper could have happened to any one of us who were there. Um, any one of us who are Black and in this space. And the great part about this is that Anna is not even a bird watcher, or well, she is now, but before the event, she did not consider herself a bird watcher. And so it just shows that even other Black people understand the need to uplift our community. So the question that I get a lot of times is why now? But Black Birders Week was not just about the incident that occurred in Central Park. It was about the protests that have been going on around the nation. It was an outcry for non-Black Indigenous people of color to see us for who we are in society. It was to highlight the differences in our everyday lived experiences. Black Birders Week was just one of the many protests that are currently going on around the US. We wanted to highlight the fact that racism is not just in the police department, but it is interwoven into every aspect of our society, even within the outdoors. And the question that I continuously get is why is it necessary to have a Black Birders Week? Isn't separating by race and highlighting the Black experience further dividing us? Isn't it further pulling us away from our mission? And the answer is no. This is why Black Birders Week was important. Black Birders Week provided visibility to a lot of Black scientists and outdoor enthusiasts who may not otherwise see themselves in their daily lives, interactions, jobs, in the media, within their hobbies. It helped to highlight the experience of Black people in the outdoors. And it's important to highlight those experiences because people interact and experience the outdoors differently. And people have different experiences in the outdoors. That sentence might sound the same, but it's not. And so this movement gained national attention. It gained attention from media outlets like The New Yorker, CNN, Forbes, Scientific American, and a wide breadth of other media outlets. This movement also gained international attention. It gained media attention from outlets in Canada, and people participated who were outside of the US. So we have one person who was a mixed kid who grew up in Southwest France, studied ecology, and did not see herself being represented. We saw a postdoctoral researcher in Sweden participating in Black Birders Week. And so it was so delightful to see the amount of people, all over the world really, who are participating in this event. And it just goes to show that the experiences of being Black in nature is not just exclusive to the US and its history, but it shows that racism and discrimination is woven into society all around the world. And so the way that we experience nature is not just a result of our skin color and how people perceive us, but it's also about how we experience nature and what we have access to. Green spaces in cities can reflect social economic inequality, which is an environmental justice issue. Now, here before you, I have two images of Chicago. We have Chicago Woodlawn, which is a predominantly Black neighborhood, and Chicago Hyde Park, which has been a predominantly white neighborhood. It's been an area that I dreamed of living in when I was growing up. And so you can visually see the differences in tree cover within these two neighborhoods. And it's a environmental justice issue. The people in the Woodlawn neighborhood do not have those same environmental benefits that they get in the Hyde Park neighborhood because of the amount of tree cover that they have. Participation in science, participation in nature, in the outdoors, and how we experience nature is also reflected. Um, we see that when it comes to citizen science, that minorities participate less than majorities, and the affluent participate more than the less affluent. And the reason for this, there are several reasons, depending on the quality of the parks in the neighborhoods, access to those neighborhoods, or transportation to the park, just having knowledge about scientific processes, and even the conflict between the day-to-day activities in life. And so why is this important? It's important because we use citizen science data sets to help make policy decisions, to help make management decisions. And so why is Black Birders Week important? It's important because birding diversity is important. And so in this map that I created during my graduate project, you can see the differences in socioeconomic income. The lighter areas are lower income neighborhoods, and the darker areas are higher income neighborhoods. And then we have these blue dots, which represent richness, bird richness in those specific parks. And these are all from eBird datasets. So my graduate project looks at if we can detect underlying socioeconomic variables using citizen science datasets. And the answer is yes. We can look at eBird datasets and we can see that points are clustered in higher income areas, those darker purple areas. We can see that there are gaps in the data that are being used to inform management decision. This means that monetary resources may get distributed unequally, favoring those parks and areas where we have data. And so how do we fill those gaps? Why do those gaps look that way? It's because there is it's because people it's because eBird is reflected was created to reflect the way that people go birding. It was created for a specific user group. And when we look at who is participating in birding, we see a very specific demographic. We see majority white participants, and we see majority participants who are 55 and over. Now, what does a more equitable method of data collection look like? It looks like a systematic method, a method that is equally covering the spatial distribution of the urban landscape. This is a more systematic way to help make sure that we eliminate any biases that may be present in the data. Another way that we ensure that we're covering those gaps or those blind spots is by being more inclusive and diversifying our bird walks. We need to rethink how we go birding and who participates. If the birding environment is more inclusive, maybe we would have a more complete and accurate coverage reflected in our data sets. And the question I always get is, well, how do we do that, Deja? How do we make birding more inclusive? How do we diversify our walks? It's pretty simple. We need to hire people from those communities, to go and lead bird walks in those communities. We need to rethink about where we're hosting our bird walks. We need to make sure that people feel welcome and that they can access the space where we're going to watch birds. Birds are everywhere. And it's not just important that we go and we hire people from those communities. It's important that we actually listen to what they have to say and we implement their ideas and allow them the creative freedom to actually move this agenda forward. And so our last event of our second to last event and my favorite event of Black Birders Week was our live stream event, Birding While Black. So we had two different sessions. Maybe you caught one of them. The first session was at 12 p.m. with Christian Cooper, and the second session was at 7 p.m. with Dr. Drew Lanham. And so the reason why I enjoyed this event so much is because it opened the doors for us to start having a lot of those critical conversations to help move us forward and more towards a more inclusive and diverse outdoors. And so, because of Black Birders Week, many people in our field gain opportunities and gain exposure for what they do. And it provided an opportunity to present representation for the next generation of future conservationists and outdoor explorers. It helped to break down barriers. There were a few organizations that made a pledge to help make birding more inclusive during Black Birders Week. They offered free membership for Black ornithologists. People offered free birding classes. And they even created a campaign to get free binoculars for young Black birders. Because one of the barriers for Black people to get into bird watching, or for a lot of minorities to get into bird watching, is the equipment barrier. If you don't know, binoculars are extremely expensive, and they can easily cost anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s. And raising money for binoculars for young Black birders and new bird watchers really helps to eliminate some of those barriers. And once you upgrade from just using binoculars and you want to get even further into bird watching, and maybe you want to you want to learn how to ID some of those shorebirds, you need to get a scope, which is even more expensive. And so then it brings me to our last event of our last event of the week, which was Black Women Who Bird. And so it was really important for us that we highlighted the difficulties of being intersectional, and the differences of being a Black woman who birds. So the duality of both being Black and being a woman, oftentimes we struggle with people either invalidating our experiences or having to go the extra mile to prove our credibility, to prove that we saw what we saw, or to go the extra mile to prove that we know what we're talking about. That means if we're on a walk that's saying, hey, that was a great crested flycatcher that you saw, or hey, that was an eastern kingbird, and having somebody else not believe us or go to another person who they see as a figure of authority, go to confirm that sighting. And so because of Black Birders Week, we get a lot of comments like this. We get Chelsea, who says she feels that she's less alone in her field and in the outdoors. We get Sydney, who says that she's finally starting to see Blacks in STEM start to get the recognition that we have not seen in our respective workplaces, academic settings, and social circles. And a lot of times when we enter these spaces, we're alone and we work tirelessly to make space for others. We see people like Erin saying that she remembers starting out in the field and feeling so alone. And that because of Black Birders Week, she realized that the community was much bigger than she could have ever imagined. And that was the case for me as well. We even see people like Carl, who says that he finally took the time to appreciate the variety of birds that he has in his yard. Like, he finally took the time to step outside and take and stop and look at the birds that are around him and the diversity of birds that are in his own neighborhood. Because of Black Birders Week, we see people who are saying they finally feel seen, they finally feel accepted and welcome, they feel inspired. We see people who are saying that for the first time in their lives, they saw a discussion with all Black scientists. It's 2020, and it was the first time they saw a discussion with all Black scientists, and that they felt inspired and validated by Black Birders Week. We see people who say that they found an amazing community and feel validated as a woman and that they're not so alone. We found community within Black Birders Week. People finding connections, meeting other scientists, learning about SciComm, how to communicate with the public. And it was also a bright spot in an otherwise painful and dark moment of the year. We're going through a pandemic. You know, we're going through this time where there are riots and protesting going around all around the US. As a Black person, you're seeing constant images of other Black people in pain, of other people going through struggle, of people dying, and people are constantly putting this through the media. And so it was really uplifting and heartwarming that this week could just provide a sense of relief for a lot of people, and seeing something that not only was connected to the other protests, but also a bright spot. And so because of Black Birders Week, we see other groups that were inspired to start their own weeks. We see hashtag Black Hikers Week. We see hashtag Black in the Astro. We see all these other subgroups of people who are connecting via social media in a time where we can't connect face to face. Because of Black Birders Week, we, the Black AF and STEM collective, are taking steps to move and organize into a more formal organization so that we can provide more opportunities for our community, for other Black scientists, for us to connect, for us to rejoice, for us to gain professional development experiences. And so now I'd like you to meet the team behind Black Birders Week. We have Chelsea and Sheridan. Chelsea, aka the Annul Queen, who is on Twitter and Instagram and works with Annuls. And then we have Sheridan, who is an environmental and wildlife educator. And both of these women help with the graphics and the design of many of the flyers and images you saw throughout Black Birders Week. We have Danielle and Rhiannon. Danielle is a bird watcher and a biologist, and she helped handle the social media. And Rhiannon is in Canada, and she's a mammologist, and she helped with a lot of the Twitter interface and the communicating with the public that you saw. You have myself and Brianna, who are leading, organizing the Facebook live streams to help create a lot of those pivotal discussions during Black Birders Week. And then you have Karina and Jason, are two of our many superstars that we have on our team, who really helped to make sure that we could get the word out about Black Birders Week and that we got the most attention possible to this movement. And so it was not just a group of 6 or 7 people. Black Birders Week was created by a collective of over 30 people, each one of them an expert in their field in their own ways, each of them a crucial part of society, each of them who could have been Christian Cooper, each of them who have a voice and have expertise and are valuable in the conservation and outdoor field. But Black Birders Week was not just about us. Black Birders Week was about everyone who identifies as a Black Indigenous person of color. And I say all that to say that Black men and women, we belong in the outdoors. Thanks. Uh-oh. I can't hear you, Chris.
Oh, yep, I'm back.
All
My
right,
fault,
great.
sorry. Yeah,
Problem.
I disappeared for a moment. My voice said, "Thank you very much." Oh gosh, such great stories.
Thank you.
I I imagine that it must have been a lot of work to be involved in trying to very quickly put together a week-long program like Blackbirders Week, but also really exciting.
It was. It was super exciting, super fulfilling. I don't think any of us expected it to get the attention that it got, especially for something that we threw together in 48 hours essentially. And it was constant because it was that quick turnaround. It was constant working and communication over the entirety of the week to make sure that everything kind of went off as flawlessly as possible.
So I'm kind of curious about how your team was able to bring it all together. I mean, you mentioned that everybody was already pretty well connected. You've been interacting in this digital space, but like I work in events production, live events and social media events just for the museum, um, and those are a lot of work. Like, tell me a little bit about what the discussions were like, what you're planning to do, how you knew to get National Audubon Society or Monterey Bay Aquarium in on some of these things too.
Yeah. So the the group of young STEM professionals that we have in the group, we're not all grad students. We're all in the STEM space, but we're all young professionals. So we have people like Tyke James who works with National Audubon, and we have people like Brianna who work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So we have these people with these connections who were, putting out their feelers and their strings and their networks to see, what type of help we could get and who our allies were during this week. And I think that that was one of the main things is that we saw during this week who our allies were and who was willing to help uplift our voices, in comparison to those who were, questioning why any of this was necessary.
Hmm. See, and I'll remind everybody, questions and comments, drop them into the chat box because we'll grab those and pose those to Deja as we go. So I'm going to be checking that, and I've got people sending me questions, so I'll get the list going here um, in just a second. But Deja, also tell me a little bit about the work that you've done, your graduate project and your graduate research as well, because it's really directly related to the same issues that Black Birders Week was sought to address and raise
Mhm.
awareness on.
Yeah, so my graduate project, I was working directly with a citizen science project called the Triangle Bird Count. And really, what I was doing was comparing two data sets. I was comparing eBird, which is, this online platform for birders, and they, submit data that's being used. People can control where they're going birding. They pick wherever they want to go. And then with the Triangle Bird Count and other systematic point counts, like, the Fresno Bird Count or the Tucson Bird Count, there we pretty much tell people where they go birding. And so it helps us create a more equal picture of what the bird diversity looks like across the urban landscape. So I was really checking to see if there was a difference between those two data sets and if you could detect some of those social economic variables like income, and how that influences what birds we see or the diversity of birds that we see in the city.
So as part of that work, like for the Triangle Bird Count, were you out doing field work? Like were you hitting each one of those blue dots systematically through, it looked like most of the city of Raleigh?
Yes, the Triangle Bird Count actually covers Raleigh, Durham, Garner, Cary, and Chapel Hill. So we had over 900 points across all those five cities. And so it wasn't just me. I had my team of citizen scientists, I had my team of undergrad lab techs. And so I'm going out to those sites, or we're all going out to those sites, and we're conducting 10-minute bird surveys at each location. And so we're going to this one spot in the city. It could be, in someone's front yard, not in their yard, but on the public access way of someone's of a street in a residential area, or it could be in the parking lot of a mall, or the parking lot of a Chili's, or um, it could be in Umstead Park. So I'm going and to each of these locations, and I'm standing there for 10 minutes to try and count how and see how many birds and what types of birds I'm hearing for 10 minutes by sight and sound.
So you really know your birds.
I think I'm getting pretty good at it.
To I can maybe I feel like because I work at a science museum, I'm supposed to know lots of birds and lots of reptiles and be able to ID stuff all the time. I've maybe got two birds down, just the calls, which is not very many.
Well, honestly, birding and identifying birds is super hard. So don't feel bad if, you only know those two birds. I'm pretty sure the more you practice, the better you'll get. I get that question a lot with IDing by ear. There are so many birds all over the world, and they definitely differ. Like, you can put me in California and I wouldn't know a single bird out there. So it definitely takes practice and just constant work.
Well, let me see what folks are saying over here in the chat for you. Let's see. Alex wrote, birds are just straight up little reptiles, lit reptiles. Oh, okay. Oh, I know Alex. Alex is a dinosaur fan. And
Birds
so
are dinosaurs, yes.
throwing it way back into evolutionary history with that one. Stacy, oh, you had this in your presentation too. Stacy mentioned the episode of the podcast Ologies, hosted by Ali Ward, where she wrote lots and lots of various Blackologists, the Black AF and STEM episode.
Yes.
Were
I
you
was
on that episode? Did I
I
miss
was
it?
I was a part of that episode, along with a lot of um, other people who are in Black AF and STEM and who are, not a part of the collective. But it was great to, listen and hear about all the different things that we do, especially since before it's easy to think that you're alone in this field. And so just to hear about all the cool things, and some people were doing things that I have no idea about. So I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
All right. Excellent, excellent. Okay. Penelope was asking, what accounts for the difference in tree cover in the two Chicago neighborhoods you showed us? Woodlawn and Hyde Park. Is that right?
Yes. So tree cover, it has been found that tree cover can reflect the historical past. And so we call them historical legacies. And so oftentimes tree cover can reflect redlining practices. Redlining was a historical discriminatory practice where banks pretty much decided what neighborhoods they could invest into, who they gave loans out to go live and purchase housing in certain places. And those practices were to keep Black people out of certain neighborhoods and to keep them in, a specific area. And a lot of times those red line neighborhoods they're on poor quality land, and they don't have a lot of environmental benefits. They have less trees. So it's been found that neighborhoods that were red line and had, let's say, they were classified as D, or the red line neighborhood or the Black neighborhood, they had less tree cover than neighborhoods that were marked as A, or neighborhoods that were actually invested into.
Next one. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Allie's asking, Allie says, amazing talk. Do you think Black Birders Week could become an annual thing?
We want Black Birders Week to become an annual thing. It would be amazing. I think that it would be great if, the pandemic slowed down and eliminated itself so that next year we could do an in-person meetup for Black Birders Week and we could all be in this one space and go birding together and really feel the sense of community outside of just the digital space.
I know, right? When you're in a pandemic, you can't go do the thing that everybody's talking about doing, which is get outside with your peers and bird experts and look for birds. You can do it by yourself.
You can, but it's much more fun when you go birding together.
So I've heard of this thing called bird o'clock, which is when the time you have to get up in the morning to go birding.
Mhm.
What time is bird o'clock?
I think bird o'clock is whatever time you decide you want to go out birding, but birds
Okay.
are more active in the morning. So the earlier you go out, the the more birds are going to be active because in the morning they're typically out there, they're singing, and so we get that phrase, the early bird catches the worm. And so you have your robins that are outside singing at 5 a.m. And so for me, I typically wake up with the birds. I have a song sparrow that sings outside of my window. And so once he starts singing, I know that it's time for me to get up and I go outside, which is typically I like to get out and go birding around 7 o'clock, 6, 7 in the morning. But I know people start as early as 5 a.m.
Woo. If you want to see the birds, I guess you
Yes,
got to be about it.
got to be about it.
All
Can't
right.
just talk the talk, you got to walk the walk.
At 5 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay. Here. Okay. Uh, Getting into some more questions here. Casey asks, how, as a white person, can I help promote minority participation in the outdoors? Or the opposite question, maybe, how do I know when my participation is unwanted as well?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you have to be intentional about your actions. I think when you are not being intentional, it can come off pretty easily as fake. I think that a lot of people try to engage with communities just for the photo op or just to, be able to say that they did something. But it's important that you are intentional about your actions and really build a long lasting relationship, build a relationship. It's not going to be super easy. The first time you go out there, things might be awkward, but if you keep coming back and show that you're really committed and you really want to do the things that you're saying you want to do, then you're going to start to gain trust from the community that you're trying to work with.
Excellent answer. Thank you. Okay. I'm scrolling here looking for the next one. Oh, do you know of, okay, JB says great presentation. What
Thanks.
outreach is occurring at NC State to have more minorities involved in citizen science?
Good question. I don't really know. If I'm being honest, I know that I was trying to engage more minorities in my citizen science project. Um, but birds sometimes can be a hard sell because it is difficult to get into birding. Like we were talking about earlier, you have to know what the birds are. A lot of times when you're doing that type of citizen science project, you have to, there's a certain skill level that you have to have. But I think if you have um if you have a group of people who are interested in a project, you guys could, contact a specific citizen science project, go on SciStarter, or look up. There are tons of projects out there. You just have to figure out what's important to you and what's of interest to you. And, if you could get a group of people, you could definitely start your own, mini project somewhere. But as far as intentional efforts, I'm not really sure at NC State. It was difficult for me to engage with a lot of people because of not having binoculars. for those programs that I wanted to do with the different communities to get people into birding. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that would be really tough, right? Because it's like you said, there has to be long-term efforts. You have to build relationships and inroads into these communities, and a professor at NC State maybe just sort of walking up to a community center and saying everybody should go birding, and then submit their observations on eBird. It's just not that easy, right?
It's not even easy for me. A lot of times when I try and connect with people, it's why should I care about birds? Like they're like, "What? You want me to go outside and look at birds for what?" And so a lot of times I have to try really hard to make the connections between birds and people, or, talk about the mental health benefits of being outside in the community. And, being a grad student, it's a short time period. You only have 2 years, or if you're doing a PhD project, you have 4 to 5 years. But, building relationships takes time. And so a lot of times it's difficult for people to make those connections and really build a relationship with the community.
All right. There are lots of comments of people saying that they hope that Black Birders Week becomes an annual event too. So you've at least got our people behind it. They want to see more.
Well, I hopefully we have more coming. We're gonna do our best to make this an annual thing.
So what is next for Black Birders Week, or I guess is Black Birders Week part of Black AF in STEM, kind of like an umbrella collective organization, or if people
Um,
wanted to learn more or support, right? How do they do
right.
that?
So if you want to learn more, you can go and follow Black AF STEM on Twitter or on Instagram. Same name, both platforms. Um, right now, we're trying to figure out what's next. I would love to see a collective retreat happen for the members of Black AF STEM. I would like to create something to like a mass gathering of Black scientists and you know some type of huge event. At the moment, we're trying to organize and we're trying to get ourselves together so that we can provide more events like Black Birders Week and more activities and professional development opportunities for other young Black professionals in STEM.
What do you think will help carry the Black Birders Week movement forward? You've talked about all the people that were inspired by it. The ways that it changed people's perceptions, as well as the way that people and organizations started finding ways to support, like raising money to buy binoculars. What do you think are going to be the steps to keep moving those things forward, right? To keep the binoculars coming and available, for example.
I think that's a good question. I think oftentimes what we see with these movements is that we have a lot of attention um, for a short period of time, and then people start to lose interest. But I think with the current state of the world, I think that with all of the attention and a lot of the racial incidents that are happening, I think people have been inspired by Black Birders Week to they're probably I feel like a lot of people were empowered, one, by Black Birders Week to just go out there and do these other events on their own. So like Black AF and STEM was not associated with Black Hikers Week. Um, but Black Hikers Week happened, so we love to see that other people were empowered to do that. I heard something about a Black Botanist Week, and so maybe a Black Forestry Week, and so I think it's great that people are continuously, seeing these additional spaces where Black people exist. And I think as long as we continue to support and try and seek out those spaces and support them, and uplift those voices, I think that we can probably see this movement go forward. I think our allies need to use this momentum from Black Birders Week, if they were inspired to put in the work to make those changes and help breaking down barriers, because it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes a long time, and it takes a lot of effort to go about breaking down barriers that were put in place over 200 years ago. So it's going to take effort. It's going to take a while. We just have to stick with it. Um,
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here tonight.
This has been wonderful. Thank you for sharing your expertise, insight, experience. And I hope everybody finds ways to get involved and stay involved. Even maybe big institutions like museums.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, once you guys open back up, if you all ever need, somebody to come lead a bird program, I'm your girl.
You offered. I'm going to write it down because I think we can make that happen. Uh,
All
but
right.
but that will be for the future when we can safely gather and do these things in person again. So everybody, once again, wherever you're at watching the Science Cafe, big round of applause for Deja. Deja, thank you so very much. This has been fantastic. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Thanks for tuning in, for leaving your questions and your comments for us as we went along. If you want to come back and watch this presentation again or share it with other people, the link that you're viewing this show at right now will remain active. So you can share this link with everybody that you know. Tell them to come watch the presentation. You can follow the museum on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Natural Sciences on all three platforms so that you can get notified and see all the great sciencey stuff that's happening across the platforms. Of course, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel here. That'll make sure that you get notified when we're doing more exciting programs or upload new videos to the museum's YouTube. Because if you like science, the Museum of Natural Sciences is a great place to get interesting and engaging stuff. I think that is everything on my list. Oh, I am going to drop a link for a survey that everybody watching, if you went and filled out the survey and gave us your thoughts and opinions on the Virtual Science Cafe, that would help us greatly to make sure that we're providing you with the types of science content, programs, videos, lectures, and other stuff, trivia nights, right, that you might want to see from the museum. So I'm going to drop that in the chat box just as soon as I can here in just a second. And that'll be that. So thank you very much, everybody. And I hope that we'll see you again real soon here on the internet from the Museum of Natural Sciences. Good night, everyone.